Hey, you. Yeah, you. Hey, before this video starts, why don't you go ahead and click that like button and subscribe to the channel? And if you don't do it, well, that Ren figure back there is gonna go ahead and go into a jar. Not the good kind. Yes, so today we are talking about the Demon Slayer manga. Now, I did watch the season 1 anime, and I also watched the movie, and I gotta say, those are some of the best things out there right now in terms of the new generation in anime. But I decided to go ahead, because I'm an impatient, I'm an impatient cunt, and I decided to go ahead and I decided to watch. I decided to read the manga, and honestly, I'm pretty happy overall with how the story went. Now, before I continue, I do just want to say that there will be huge spoiler warnings for this manga, because of course the season's coming out. I assume they tend to finish the series just like they did with the manga. So huge in quotation marks, huge spoiler warnings. If you don't want to know anything about the current season that's coming out or any other season that could potentially come out, please, for the love of God, turn away from this video now. But yes, I did myself like the Demon Slayer manga. It was a pretty enjoyable read for the most part. The characters were really fun to watch. The overall story kept pretty consistent. But there was one part in general that I didn't like. So I would say overall I don't have any real criticism of the manga overall. The only thing I would say is that the power system, or the way the magic system works in the world, gets a little bit iffy towards like the middle of the series, when you start actually thinking about incorporating things like love breathing and stay breathing and sound breathing and how those correlate, and because you think only elements can work, but maybe that also has something to do with the corresponding elements that they're branches of. It's a whole thing, and we don't really get a true explanation of that, but I'm okay with that, just as a, oh yeah, you can build off techniques and call it your own, and you can make things. Because obviously, if you can branch off the central technique, then you can branch off the techniques that were branching off in central techniques, and just keep branching off from there. So I'm willing to at least concede that point. But the point that gets to me, right? And this is at a certain point in the manga, when you hit the Sword Village arc. Right after that, and the moment that you see Nezuko finally start speaking for the first time in a while in the manga, and I mean like, not like she was in the beginning, I'm talking about she is still a demon, she can survive the light, she's actually talking without having this raging bloodlust, like she's become like a lot more powerful. And then it just takes this weird direction of Muzan, or Mudan, I forget his main character's main villain's name, wanting Nezuko and not the blue flower that they've been wanting to chase. Apparently, he just gives two shits about the flower anymore, and he's like, wow, Nezuko's become this powerful? I fuck this flower. Let's go ahead and let's catch this motherfucker. Then after that, it turns into this weird thing where things start feeling way more like out of pace, things start speeding up, things start like being kind of inconsistent. It feels like we're rushing through the manga rather than it feeling like the actual Demon Slayer corpse is going through more of a panic. And this is around like a final arc. I'd say this is a, like, you could technically call this like the training arc, which like, it more confuses me, just the pacing and how everything went and like other things they threw in there. But thanks to my friend Diro, I at least have a little bit more explanation as to why I got this feeling. So he also read the manga too, and he kind of felt the same way. And he actually decided to look into it and actually found out that the main creator of the series for Demon Slayer ended up having some family issues and had to end up rushing the manga, because her whole statement with it was that either she stops it and doesn't know when she's going to get back to it, or she puts out what she can, and then that's what we're going to get, and then she can go off and do her thing. So basically, her thing was you either get a finished version of the a rush version of the manga, or you get an incomplete manga that they don't know when they're ever going to get back to. And I do at least appreciate the creator willing to just give an ending rather than just being like, no, I have to make it perfect. I have to have it the way I wanted it to. And if it takes 10 years to finish, I don't care. I appreciate the creator at least saying, look, I understand you guys are very invested. I understand that there's a lot more fans that are willing to watch this now because of the anime. And I know that you guys are going to want to end. So let me rush the end. Let me put everything what I can in, just in a kind of a mishmash, and then just give it to you as it is. Now, I don't know if this was like kind of her intention and she wanted a little more detail, or if like this is a very watered down version of her end. But overall, given the circumstances and given that she had to rush everything, I'm pretty impressed with at least knowing she had to rush this. If this was someone who took their time and actually wanted to plan it out, I'd probably be a lot more harsh and a lot more critical on the actual execution of how everything goes. Because there's, like, listen, the last two arcs, especially the last arc, has a lot of problems in the manga that it just bothered me for so much, because there's so much potential that's left on the table. But I get it given the situation, so I'm at least willing to give a little bit more of a leeway. But of course, you know, we can't just be like, oh yeah, you had problems, cool. At the end of the day, we still gotta give criticisms to the art, and that's exactly what we're here to do. But just to give a rundown of everything that I at least liked before I get into like the big part that really bothered me. The Entertainment District art is probably one of my favorites. The Sound Hashira is probably one of my favorite Hashiras. I just love his enthusiasm and his gusto and his personality through and through. Not to mention, the Entertainment District arc gives us some of the most like interesting looks and interesting interactions that we see our three main characters go through, and I love that. There's a really nice bonding scene with Tanjiro and Nezuko, and they do something that is cool where they do let Tanjiro have this little cool power thing where he's able to use two breathing techniques at the same time. But of course, they do make it with the caveat like, yo, this was a complete accident, and this boy is completely fucked up and completely destroyed for using this. And you should probably never go down this again, because I haven't seen anyone use two breaths, and you're one of the first. But that almost killed you, dog, so you should probably stay away from that. And the reason why I like that in particular is mostly because people like to give power creeps and like out of nowhere powers to characters who haven't really earned it and whatnot. At least I would say Tanjiro would deserve something like that, but I would also say springing it out in the middle of a battle out of nowhere is kind of wrong. But I at least appreciate it as sort of like this is kind of an accident thing and you should probably do this. And Tanjiro, knowing better, despite him throughout the manga getting better with the breathing techniques, doesn't really use a second breathing technique, which I appreciate for the most part. You can say it's kind of an ex machina, but like even when he does it, he's still not really able to defeat the upper moon that they go against, and they all barely leave with their lives, don't get me wrong. Even with him using two breaths, Tanjiro, Zetsu, with Sound Hashira, and Inosuke and then Nezuko barely leave with their fucking lives. Everyone's maimed. If it wasn't for Nezuko's weird healing fire, which that one feels like a little bit more of a weird add-on thing, but you're also developing her powers and made it a point that she's vicariously developing powers and getting stronger as she goes on, so I'm kind of willing to forgive that part. But if it wasn't for Nezuko doing that Sound Hashira would have died. We would have been down another Hashira in that series at this point, and it would have been a whole mess. But they were left with their lives, and for the most part, I find that extremely enjoyable. Not to mention the battles were so fucking good, and the sibling-to-sibling connection with the Upper Moons, and then with Tanjiro and Nezuko. Just a lot about the Entertainment District was fantastic, and I loved it. Now, the Sword Village arc, if I'm gonna be honest, is probably my least favorite, and it's not because it's bad. It just felt like it could have been a lot more, and I feel like it was also used to develop the overall characters and give us a little bit more understanding and lore between how the swords are made and the purpose of the swords, and really understanding the importance of this is the importance of the sword that demon slayers use. We are one of the biggest pillars in terms of slaying demons, and if anything would happen to us, we'd be fucked. And I don't even think like this Hashira or the Hashiras they talk about is bad. Like the Mist Hashira is interesting, also given the fact that, you know, Mist is one of those older ones that not anyone's really to use. And then there's the Love Hashira, which everybody fucking loves. But I know for a fact that a lot of that love comes from, like, the 2 minutes that we've barely seen her on screen. And everyone's just like, hey, it's colorful-haired big titty girl. Now, don't get me wrong. I have my fair share of love for colorful-haired big titty anime girls. But bro, she hasn't even really done anything in terms of the manga, in terms of the anime, and everyone's just going Google Gagas over her. I just find that extremely funny, but it's also par for the course for a lot of the anime fan base. I'm sorry, that's kind of true, but we do get to see more of her in the manga, as she does help Tanjiro and the Miss Hashira go against the demons that are there. And if I'm going to be completely honest with you, like, both of them aren't, like, bad characters. I don't want to say they're bad characters, because they're not, realistically. Like, I've seen far worse from other anime, but there's something about that just made them seem, like, so bland. The Miss Hashira is a little bit more interesting later on, but the Love Hashira is only kind of just, like, there. And I'm not saying she doesn't do anything. She kicks some serious ass. Don't get me wrong. Girl power all the fucking way. But in terms of, like, her personality, like, there's nothing that really makes her, like, stand out in sorts. Because I feel like if you're gonna be the Hashira, right? And I feel like if you're gonna be the only female Hashira in terms of a mostly male Hashira group, that, oh, wow, my bad. I fucked up there. I forgot about Shinobu. She's okay. So the Love Hashira is not the only female Hashira. I fucked up on that. That's my bad. Oh shit, don't call me out on that. So if you're going to be one of two female Hashiras, let me fix that. One of two female Hashiras, you should be, I feel like, a little bit more of a badass. Because Shinobu, like, her thing is that she's too weak to actually cut through the actual demons, right? But that's why she's called the Insect Hashira. Because instead of cutting through the actual demons themselves, she uses the poison from insects that she studies and develops to make poison that's strong enough to kill demons. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Akame ga Kill, or Akame from Akame ga Kill, and how her sword has the ability to kill anybody as long as it cuts them. I found that actually kind of interesting, and I kind of see it reflected over here, but there's nothing necessarily that makes her unique. I will say, though, that her blades are probably my favorite, because I love the little, like, blade that looks like a blade, but it's actually just, like, this fucking whip, and she's just going around, she's just like, fuck yeah, fuck you all, you get fucked by my blade spin, and it's fucking cool, I'm not gonna lie. If there's anything special about her in that regard, it's her blade. Her blade definitely makes her stand out. If I was to collect anybody's blade, if you gave me a choice of, like, alright, you can have anybody's blade from Demon Slayer, I would unironically get her blade because it's so cool. And it also kind of reminds me from Ivy from Soul Calibur. I don't know what it is, I've just always liked blades that, like, have that, like, break apart ability. It's like, it's the reason I like that redheaded dude from Bleach, and the reason why I like that small little girl from Dead Man Wonderland. But we're getting off topic. The demons that they fight are unique as well, but, like, again, it just all feels so kind of just, like, average. And to be fair, for an arc like this would be so hype in, like, a normal anime. Like, if you put the concept of this in an anime like One Piece or Boruto or Bleach or any of the big, like, anime being talked about like that, I'm pretty sure this would be one of the more hyped arcs because everything about this is so cool. This is talking about average for Demon Slayer standards. And for Demon Slayer standards, this is average. But overall, it's still a good arc. It just was a standard arc, and there's definitely far better arcs in the show. But it's good overall. Again, it all matches with the things that I said, not to mention just the good pacing, good character development, good all that stuff and whatnot. But it's at this point right here, where I start having my problems. And I have a whole list of them going between not much the training arc. The only thing I can really say about the training arc is the weird mark concept that they come up with, where Tanjiro gets a mark at some point. I think he gets it during the Sword Village arc. And they're all talking like, oh, well, if he can get the arc, then maybe some of our other Hashiras can try to get him arc. And some of them do through this vigorous training that they get, which is actually really good. But they're all basically preparing themselves for like the big you fuck off war that's going to happen. Or it's not necessarily a war, but it's more like an invasion type thing. But like I said, we'll get into that. So yeah, the training arc itself wasn't actually that bad. We get a little cute little neat things to kind of set up everything for the most part, but overall it wasn't necessarily that egregious. It's the Infinite Mansion arc that really fucking gets me. So my overall opinion of the Infinite Mansion arc, it was a good arc. It was an interesting arc. Hell, it was even a fun arc. However, it felt like so much shit was being thrown at the wall with little to no cohesion. Now, in a sense, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The whole Infinite Mansion arc, I feel like it's supposed to feel a little chaotic. It's supposed to be that huge blow-off, fuck-off arc where you have all your favorites and all the main characters and all the side characters going to either like a city or going to a different dimension, and they're either saving someone or they're going to kill somebody or they're going because something happened, and it's all supposed to have little stories that are like following each other. And like you have one people battling over here, one people trying to find their way out somewhere here, one people almost dying over here. It's supposed to be the clusterfuck arc where everything like happens and where everything's supposed to give like either a satisfying end, or we're gonna have like the really big moments that define the rest of the anime, or it's supposed to be the blow off towards the end of the anime. And I'm gonna be honest with you, Demon Slayer does it well, but they don't necessarily do it right. And I'm going to be frank, not many people know how to do this right. I think the only thing that I've seen that I could say they got it 100% right and they know how to do it is Jujutsu Kaisen Shibuya arc. And I will talk about that in another video because that was one of the most hyped things that I've watched in a long time. But the Demon Slayer arc, I would say, is definitely up there. Even with it being rushed, even with it having its own little problems, I still put it up in the high echelon of those blow-off arcs type of things, right? This was definitely the big arc, and it definitely delivered on quite a lot of things. It was entertaining, it was fun, a lot of people died. In my opinion, too many people died, and we definitely got a lot of satisfying endings and a lot of satisfying answers to things that we've had throughout the series. However, not everything was great. A lot of things could be fixed, and a lot of things I feel like were just kind of left in the dust. Probably one of my biggest things for this arc in general was the fact that there were side stories for Zetsu and Inosuke, and none of them had the actual build to where the ending was completely satisfied. And I'm assuming that this is what was supposed to be for the other two right after the Tanjiro arc in the Sword Village, because Tanjiro is the only person that goes to the Sword Village to get his sword fixed, of course. Zetsu goes to do his own thing, and Inosuke goes to do his own thing. So both of them are having their own stories and own adventures. So what I'm thinking in my head was that if this wasn't rushed, we would have an arc specifically dedicated to Zetsu, and an arc specifically dedicated to Inosuke to build those stories to when the Infinite Mansion was supposed to, collide and bring all of that together. But to basically give you the gist of what I think was supposed to happen, I think Zetsu was supposed to run into one of his, I guess you would call him, he's not really a relative, but his own rival, the other dude who was trained by the dude that he calls Gramps. And I think he was supposed to see how strong Zetsu's gotten since traveling with Tanjiro and Inosuke and fighting lower moons and coming in contact with upper moons and actually getting some, reputable clout in the Demon Slayer Corps while, he hasn't really done much. So his way to get power was supposedly to become a demon, which is where Zetsu goes off on his own, knowing full well that that same person that trained with him and Gramps is in that tower and becomes one of the upper moons. And he and Zetsu fight, and Zetsu ends up doing some crazy fucking shit, which I thought was raw, and ends up defeating him in about a relatively quick fashion. I think Zetsu's concept out of the three was supposed to be the more whatever type, but I think it would have been a really satisfying ending to the overall idea of Zetsu, where he's kind of a coward and he can't really fight unless he passes out, and he passes out a lot, but when he does have the ability and potential in himself to actually clap some demons. And this, I think, was supposed to be the blowout arc of, I'm not scared anymore, I'm not scared of you, you might be an upper moon, you might be stronger than me, but I know that I've reached my goal, and you cheated to get there. Kind of like a thing of just like, yeah, you cheated to your way, but there's still flaws that you haven't fixed. I've at least fixed my flaws, so that makes me better than you, because I've acknowledged that I'm bad, and I got better like through conquering my bad things. And that would have been an actual satisfying story. It probably would have been the lesser of the three combined stories, but that would have been a legitimately interesting story, and it sucks that we really didn't get that here. And then there's Inosuke's story. Now, Inosuke's story, I'm not gonna lie, you could have made his story an entirely different anime. Because basically the concept of here is that we get a little bit of a hint for it first, actually, right? Where Tanjiro, Inosuke says that he was raised kind of by a dude who just found him, and he kind of raised them how to be human, or at least how to act more, civilized in society and not act like a wild boar all the time. But in all actuality, we actually get a little glimpse of his actual past. Well, the getting raised by random dudes actually past, but like further into his past, like when he was a youngster that he probably couldn't even remember, where there's a cult ran by the upper second moon, and one of the big figures, or the person that was brought into that cult, was Inosuke's mom, with Inosuke. Now, I forget what the concept or not the concept, but I forget exactly what happens, but basically a lot of stuff leads to her not wanting to do something, and eventually trying to run away from the cult, throwing Inosuke off to save his life, and then the upper moon ending up killing Inosuke's mom. So there's like a legitimate beef and a very interesting story right there, and we don't got it. It's like one of the most disappointing things that I've read that I haven't gotten. And please, let me clarify. When I say disappointing, I don't mean the arc itself was disappointing, or Inosuke's story overall was disappointing. I think with the way he works, and him actually noticing, like there's a moment where Inosuke is kind of airheaded, but there's a moment where it clicks, and he understands what the upper moon is saying, because he recognizes Inosuke, and because of how, amazing he looks, and he's like, oh my god, you're that person's child. And it clicking in his head and realizing what he has to do, I thought that was still boss. It was like the opposite of Zetsu's story, where his was like, that needed the story in order for it to be impactful. And Inosuke's didn't necessarily need it to be impactful, but if we got the story, it would have been impactful, and I would have loved every single minute of it. That alone, if we got the concept for just Inosuke's story, that alone would have risen the quality of the Infinite Mansion arc by like 1,000,000,000%. Because of like the whole thing with Shibuya and her mentor and Inosuke coming in there and everything just playing off, and the sacrifice that Shibuya gave and the sacrifice that her mentor had to give in order to do that, and Inosuke coming over and being a fucking boss, like all of that was so amazing and cool. Like that, the upper second moon versus Inosuke, Shibuya, and the Shibuya's trainee, I forget her name, I constantly do, but those three together fighting versus the second moon, probably like my second favorite fight in that like entire arc, because it was just so good. It was so good and it was so impactful. Like I read through that whole thing like all night because I wanted to find out exactly what the fuck happened in that, because it was so goddamn good. Like that's why I'm so disappointed that we didn't get the story, the proper like time to build. And I'll say it all the time, I get it, family stuff happens, but imagine if we got it. Imagine if we got it, and imagine how great that would be. Another thing I was disappointed about a character was Nezuko not really getting, not really, she definitely did not get like a final battle sequence, which, Nezuko versus Muzan, like seeing how far Nezuko's grown versus Muzan or whatever the fuck his name is, Michael Jackson, my god, that would have been amazing to see, but they decide to leave Nezuko behind. Which, if I'm being completely honest, that was the smartest decision. If Nezuko is wanted by Muzan and his crew, then it would not be the wisest decision to bring Nezuko to Muzan. It just makes sense. And I don't know if it was rushed because of that, or if it was the fact that she was supposed to be caught, and the Infinite Mansion arc was supposed to be them rescuing Nezuko, which that I could see. But I do like it more because it at least gives a little bit more logic to, the characters. So there was some good that came from the rush, I guess. But when you have such a good character like Nezuko, and you have her developing like you should, and you at least insinuate that she's gonna keep developing her powers, if she there's no end to it, she can obviously survive the light. Who knows what the fuck else she could do? Muzan versus Nezuko would have legitimately been like a fight scene of the year contender for the Crunchyroll Awards, because I can't think of a better concept or a better idea than Nezuko versus Muzan fighting each other. That shit would be so lit. That shit would be so lit. Just seeing her go off and him go off, and then there's just the whole fucking sun, and she's able to survive it and fuck it up, and he's not, and showing her power and all that shit. I'm just thinking about it now, and all of it's just beauty and amazing. But see, instead, what they do with Nezuko is that they take Nezuko and they actually give her the serum so she can go back to being human, because they eventually finish it. And don't get me wrong, I don't completely hate this, because it's the most logical decision. If Muzan wants Nezuko, then you need to keep her away from Nezuko. And the only way that Muzan's no longer going to chase Nezuko is if Nezuko stops becoming a demon. It makes the most sense, but the shonen garbage mind in me just wants to have that fight. I want it to be they're preparing to give it to her, and Nezuko just senses, or it's just, not even senses, it's just worried for her brother, and then just goes after them and sees the fucking tower, and then tries to go in, and fights her way in, and then finds Muzan, and then fights Muzan with Tanjiro, and thinking about it is just turning me on at this point. Now, because you're 14, just the fight sequence. But that's also another genuine big loss to the show. I would have loved that. I think a lot of people would have loved that. And I think people who don't know that's not going to happen, and they get to see that, are going to be actually quite disappointed that we didn't get something like that. And it's, something that would have made a lot of people happy, I think. But who did do a lot of fighting? The Hashiras. And boy, did they fucking die. By the time we have the Infinite Mansion arc, we have Rengoku, the Fire Hashira, who has been executed by Izawa. And then we have the Sound Hashira, I forget his name, who ends up, he survives the Entertainment District arc, but he's left with no arm, and he can barely fight, and he's only really there to just train people. He really isn't a Hashira anymore, but he still has the respect of one, but he still exists. So now we're down 2 Hashiras. So my thought is okay, they're probably gonna kill 2 more, everyone else is gonna live, but nope, I was completely fucking wrong. Apparently everyone's just fucking dying. And there's some that I feel like an unnecessary death. I feel like there's a lot of people who could have lived, who could have actually survived, could have actually gone ahead and lived prosperous lives, or it makes sense for them to be alive. You could have had this stone guy die. You could have had maybe the couple die, the love and the snake Hashira. But after that, no one necessarily really needs to die. I mean, you could have an option of whether the Wind Hashira needs to die. I wouldn't probably do it. Actually, you know what I would have done? I probably would have killed the Wind Hashira, and I would have switched it around and have his brother live. That's what I would have done. I would have had that. I would have had that situation. So then all we're left with is, oh damn, I think I killed more people in the actual story. Yep, no, I might take that all back. I had to take a minute to actually think about it. I think that I killed just enough, if not maybe one more less than the actual anime did. I think my only difference is that I would have probably had the Mist Hashira stay alive, and the Wada Hashira, Gyu, or whatever his name is, and everyone else just dies, because it makes sense for them to die. But that's pretty much what they did. The only switch is that instead of the Mist Hashira dying, it was instead of the Sound Hashira dying, it was the... What? You know, now that I think about it, I've thought about it real hard. Nope. We have everyone. Everyone who was a Hashira that died needed to die. Made sense for them to die. Everyone who is alive, makes sense that you're alive. Although I'm still debating about the Wind Hashira, but more or less, I retract my previous comment. Now that I've actually thought about it. Also, one thing that just bothered me that I felt was just so unnecessary. And again, I think it's one of those things where it should have been like a long-term thing, is Muzan somehow possessing Tanjiro and turning Tanjiro into a demon and trying to pull Tanjiro into the darker side of like a demon soul and like trying to corrupt him from the inside out and giving him to his own urges while everyone's trying to fight him off. Like, I get what they were trying to do, but for such a short time, I feel like this was kind of unnecessary and something you could have actually cut out. Now, see, I can see this being planned out in a long-term scenario. Like, if you have it planned out where Muzan's trying to get the Blue Flower Nori to live, but you guys take care of that plan. Muzan's trying to get Nezuko, but you try to take that plan. So he says, you know what? Fuck it. If I can't do that, then I'm just going to do a last hour. I am possessing you and bring you to the dark side. And have it be like its own little smart thing where Tanjiro tries to fight off Muzan while they try to like go clean up demons, but eventually, you know, Muzan actually possesses him and he tries to fight back. I could see that being played out into a pretty interesting type of scenario. Although this was just like Tanjiro got possessed at the very last minute. Tanjiro wants to fight Nezuko. Nezuko and everyone's trying to fight off Tanjiro. Tanjiro fights off Muzan's soul, and eventually he comes back. It like threw me off, and it also makes like no sense whatsoever. But it was one of those things where it's just like, sure, I guess. I think that's the one thing I'm only like genuinely like I can't find a reason for this to exist within the manga. Like if you just killed him and you just like made it like, okay, yeah, we did it, cool, good end. I think that's fine. And I think they only did it just to have that like that final like confirmed death scene where Muzan's being like, oh, I can live on through you. You can live on through me. We could be together. Don't you want that power? And Tanjiro being like, nah, brah, I'm good. And him just like kind of fading to the void. I think if you just had it the way it is and added maybe a little bit more of intensity towards like his final moments of death, I think it would have been fine overall to actually have. But the way that they did it was just so weird and so out of place, because it kind of feels like a M. Night Shyamalan twist where it's just like, you think it's over, psych bitch, it's not over, we ain't done yet, motherfuckers. And it's just like, why are we here just to suffer? It made zero sense whatsoever. Okay, one thing that I will say that I guess you can lump in with the Infinite Mansion arc, but it's more just like its own little thing for the ending. I do appreciate how the ending went, and I think this is the biggest reason why I staved off making this video for so long, because I've finished this manga months ago. I finished this manga in like whenever the fucking final chapter came out, which I think was sometime around the end of spring to the beginning of summer. I finished this months ago, and I've been working on this, but my concept was, my problem was I didn't know if I appreciated what the ending was doing, or if I thought the ending felt a little flat. And I think I've come to the conclusion that yes, I actually do really like the ending. I know people are going to be a little confused as to what the fuck the ending is supposed to be, or what the fuck, like, any of that is supposed to be, but it does make sense, because I get two things from it. Either A, it's supposed to show that what we're seeing right now is the ancestors of everyone who was fighting demons that we followed. And so their ancestors paved the way for them to actually live really nice lives and actually enjoy life without having to be hunted down by demons or in fear of demons or having to, panic about them, and only really treat them as a myth rather than an actual entity that they have to fear. Or this is all of them just reincarnated, but reincarnated into like what they love, and like life giving them like, okay, you did a really good job saving the world and saving the people and giving yourself to like the goodness to protect others. So we're all gonna grant you with a reincarnated life of what you really want. You get the couple plus the bakery. You get to be smart. You get to have your friends, you get to have all that. It's gonna be all nice. And I think with a lot of people being attached to Rengoku specifically, I think people are gonna really like the ending. I personally really like the ending, especially reading it back, and after I watched Mugen Train, just getting that was just like, that's so sweet, I love it. So yeah, this video went far longer than it did, but I hope you guys at least enjoyed. Overall, I'm probably gonna have to give the manga like an 8. Like I said before, I get it. There was a lot of rush, but at the end of the day, it's not perfect, but it's still good for what it is. If you made it all this way and you had all those spoilers for you for some goddamn reason, I would at least say actually read the manga first, or wait till the anime comes out. Either or. I think if I were to actually give someone a recommendation as to should I wait until the manga comes out, until the anime comes out, or should I actually finish the manga? If you are someone who's actually invested in story, I would actually say watch the anime. But at the same time, I say that, but you probably wouldn't understand the context unless you read the manga. See, because for my thing is, I am viewing the manga as the chance for the creator to actually tell the story she might want to, or for whoever they want to actually do something proper. Now, I hope they don't go too far off the walls and pull a Promised Neverland Season 2. That was god-awful. But I do at least hope that they fill in a little bit more of the details, and maybe we can get off the trail of the manga for a little bit before we get back on it for that final chapter. Because I feel like you could really do a lot if you stray away for a little bit and just tell Zetsu's story, tell Inosuke's story, put into detail, give everything that needs to be deserved, and then come back and do everything. I think you're gonna have your viewers enjoy it a lot more, rather than just having it all just happen so quickly like it did in the manga. But yeah, that's it for the video. This video was long, this video was tiring, but I thank you all for staying this long, for watching. If you like my content, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like down in the video, and tell me whatever the fuck. I wanted to do fucking questions of the week, but I just can't. Just, tell me some anime stuff down below. I would appreciate it if you do, and I hope to see you guys next time. Peace.